In the heart of the Marche region, a small village surrounded by medieval walls overlooks the Aso Valley. In just 73 kilometers, the river's course runs from the Sibillini Mountains and empties into the Adriatic Sea. This week, Museum takes us to Montefiore dell'Aso. We are guided by the architect Antonello Nonis, who oversaw the renovation and organization of the Polo Museale San Francesco Museum complex.
Montefiore dell'Aso has an image reminiscent of Italian films from the 1970s. Luminaries always present. These writings on the wall are black on a white background. The public market, the hospital sign, the old Fiat 500 puttering through the streets. The village has maintained the same flavour of 40 years ago. It's the image of an Italy told through films from the 1950s and 60s. You can imagine a town all in brick, the market with the women shouting, "Come, come, buy my vegetables."
In the late 13th century, shortly after the death of St. Francis of Assisi, a community of Franciscan friars started the building of the monastery, now home to Polo Museale San Francesco. Built at the edge of town, the monastery still enjoys an enchanting landscape.
The monastery preserved its original architectural structure. Unfortunately, the complex was left abandoned for more than a century. It was later to house schools and was then used as a gathering place for people made homeless in the Second World War. But it was a very important building in the town, occupying a vital space in the landscape. The idea was to bring life to a place that could collect and house the culture of Montefiore dell'Aso, and to get people talking about it. We set up a working group that included a set designer, a mayor, a poet, the town band, and we got to talking. What can be done with this place? Excavation was one of the most important jobs to do. The place that today stages the Sinfonia di Cinema festival in the cloister was buried in earth halfway up its columns. As we excavated, we also recovered writings by the friars recounting their days in long ago 1524.
The monastery complex includes testimonies of works and authors that were born or lived in Montefiore dell'Aso. Artists who took their inspiration from this village to create works of art that left their mark in Italian art history. One of them is Carlo Crivelli, the Venetian artist who in 1468 moved from the Dalmatian coast to the Marche region, where he remained working in this territory until his death. On the monastery's first floor, a room in half shadow displays part of the famous painting of the Winking Magdalena, which the artist painted in the early 1470s for the Church of the Franciscan Friars in Montefiore dell'Aso.
Once the structure's renovation works were completed, we introduced the languages that Montefiore dell'Aso speaks. That is to say, how the town's citizenry has expressed itself over the centuries, through painting, crafts, filmmaking. All these languages are represented inside the monastery through a series of sections that recount an entirely Italian form of self-expression, one of myriad nuances. Together with the municipal administration, we assessed what figures left their mark in the town. This is why one of the choices fell to Giancarlo Basili. Born in Montefiore dell'Aso, Basili left for Rome and then moved to Bologna. As one of Italy's finest set designers, he has garnered many prizes. Recently, he oversaw the creation of Italy's Expo Pavilion in Shanghai. He is thus a figure that has left a strong mark in the Piceno area and in Italy.
Giancarlo Basili, a production designer for Italian art films and winner of numerous prizes, was born in Montefiore dell'Aso. Here the museum preserves sets from some of the most significant films in recent years, alongside photographs and scene sketches by such artists as Gabriele Salvatores, Nanni Moretti, Daniela Lucchetti, Marco Tullio Giordana, Carlo Mazzacurati and Gianni D'Amelio.
For me, this 10-year cinema festival here in Montefiore is quite important, and this space I've been given is highly significant for two reasons. The first is that of bringing a small town like Montefiore dell'Aso inside a film frame. The second is because with these events that we're holding on Italian film every year, events so rich in passion and enthusiasm, cinema is once again a part of these small villages' life. I invite everyone to visit this small village for the 10th anniversary of Sinfonia di Cinema, where we can join such major figures in Italian filmmaking as Marco Tullio Giordana, Angela Barbagallo, and Maria Rita Barbera, with a terrific exhibition on costumes in our films. We'll have Elio Germano and Giorgio De Riti, and movies of great significance, like the one by Elio Germano that took the Palme d'Or at Cannes. These are all films that enjoyed great success abroad, and being able to show them here in Montefiore with the real people is very important. For them, coming back to Montefiore is like coming home, a breath of fresh air for our work.
Every summer, the Giancarlo Basili Set Design Documentation Center stages in Montefiore dell'Aso the Sinfonia del Cinema Festival, welcoming actors, directors and professionals from the world of cinema into the monastery cloister that centuries earlier echoed with the humble prayers of friars and beggars.
Per noi il polo museale di San Francesco
For
rappresenta
us, Polo Museale di San Francesco is certainly a cause for pride. It was a challenge to contain what were all of our identities inside this splendid structure. This museum centre presents itself as a truly heterogeneous facility. We go from the Museum of Peasant Culture to Basili's production designs and then back to Crivelli. We think it's totally unique in this territory. It is a place of excellence not just for Montefiore, but for the entire Piceno area and the entire Marche region.
A highly precious area of work, a direct consequence of Italy's great artistic tradition, involves set designers above all. Giancarlo Basili, a production designer from Montefiore, has decided to donate his experience to his hometown and to document a little-known sector. Perhaps the results are to be seen in a movie, but we can only guess how much work, how much intelligence, talent and skill there is behind it. One of the reasons why Italian cinema took hold worldwide, especially in the post-war period, is that those working in the field were the direct heirs of goldsmiths, carpenters and cabinet makers, of those who knew how to handle the material with a skill not common to workers in other countries. This predisposition risks being lost if it is not cultivated. So it is highly important for there to be initiatives like this one in Montefiore dell'Aso, where emphasis is also placed on this great manual skill. A skill that, although apparently humble, is actually of vital importance. The contribution of workers and technicians that I call the artists of cinema. Here in Montefiore dell'Aso, at this museum facility, for those who love film, Giancarlo Basili Set Design Documentation Center is something highly significant in Italian cinema. Giancarlo has been a production designer for many of Italian's most significant films over the past 25 years. Here we see his passion and the passion of the people dedicating their life's work to cinema. So it is really worth making the trip here.
Set design is the theme that accompanies the visitor throughout the museum facility. From the set of Palombella Rossa, we move on to the Museum of Peasant Culture, which in 4 scenes reconstructs, in actual scale size, passages of life from a civilization, a rural culture, still current in the Marche region. After the yard comes the home built in earth and brick. From the road where the age-old artisans plied their trade with tools that are now museum pieces, to the ploughed fields, and then once again the panorama overlooking the enchanting Aso Valley. The painter's art certainly makes its presence felt in the Marche region's hinterland. Domenico Cantatore, an internationally renowned modern artist, moved to Montefiore from Milan to paint his dawns and sunsets, moments in a landscape that never fail to astonish.
A major feature of Montefiore dell'Aso is that many painters are in its DNA. This may be seen in the story of Carlo Crivelli, brought here from Venice in the wake of adulterous affairs in 1960. Arriving in the Marche region, here he found a homeland that welcomed him. He has given us his splendid paintings with winking Magdalenes, rendered with a sensuality out of the ordinary for a florid Gothic style from that period. A painting as beautiful as the one preserved by Montefiore dell'Aso since the 16th century has been inspiration to a great many citizens in this small town. We're speaking of a village of about 2,800 inhabitants, where everyone paints, even the mayor. There's even a prize for best painting. It is a tradition that has been going on, we can say, for centuries. Everyone expresses him or herself in this art form, leaving a painting for the citizenry and thus for future memory every year.
Lasciando ogni anno un quadro per la cittadinanza e quindi alla memoria futura.